All right, let's get into it. This particular episode, 5 of season 7 with LisaRaye McCoy of Iyanla Fix My Life, has been the most, up until now, I think I've watched all the Iyanla Fix My Life seasons. Up until now, it's been the most poignant and the most clearest illustration of generational pathologies that I've seen. There's no way you can miss it. There's no way you can miss it. And I learned so much from this episode. I discovered so much in this episode. So let's get into it without any further ado. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It is me, MsNoBuntu, DIVAA, divinely inspired, vibrantly anointed artist. And I'm doing this review, this Iyanla Fix My Life, season 7, episode 5, LisaRaye, her daughter, her mom. Let's get into it. Oh my gosh. So how it starts is that Iyanla meets and welcomes all of them, and each pick a role on a chair sort of that has a pillow and a crown on it. So the grandmother picks the queen mother role, the daughter picks the princess role, and LisaRaye picks the queen role. Okay? Now Katie, the mother, they get into it. So it's 3 of them sitting with Iyanla. That's how, first segment. Katie, the mother, tells LisaRaye that she feels like LisaRaye got Hollywood on her. It was all fine when she was on the up and up, but when she I guess went beyond a certain cusp, a certain level, she kind of changed, and she went Hollywood on them, and it hasn't been the same, I guess, since she blew up, or she blew up, whichever way you want to look at it. LisaRaye, on the other hand, says talks about being spread thin, and then coming and doing her work as hard as she's doing it in order to be able to maintain this life that she's been able to make for herself, and then being faced with coming back home to attend to domestic things like washing the dishes or clearing up the dishes. So I think she feels as if there's a sense of ingratitude about what she's doing to provide this life for her daughter and for her mother, Katie. So in the conversation, in all of them telling their own stories about what they say they're here for, Iyanla finds out that they're all living under one roof, and it's actually not 3 generations under one roof, it's 4 generations under one roof. That would be Katie, LisaRaye's mother, LisaRaye, and Kai, LisaRaye's daughter, and her daughter, a young baby daughter. Kai is 30. And LisaRaye's reflections on Kai is that she's lazy. Okay, so she doesn't connect her daughter's laziness to anything that she might have done or not have done. She just says, I think my daughter's lazy. And there's no action to her ideas or her thoughts. She just has these ideas, but she doesn't put any actions to them. The daughter, Kai, says that she's still searching for herself, and wants what her mother has been able to achieve financially for herself, but doesn't necessarily want to do what her mother does. So she's still, it seems to me like she's 30, she has a baby, but she's still finding her feet, and it doesn't sound like she's working. I could be completely wrong, but it doesn't sound like she has any kind of, and that's not to shame her. I'm just saying that it doesn't sound like she has some kind of whatever thing going that she's doing. So, Iyanla points out to them that everything starts from the queen mother, who is the head, and then trickles down to the queen, then to the princess, and then the princess's daughter. So what she's saying is that a family pathology within this generation, these 3 generations of women, if there's anywhere to look, it's at Katie, the mother, LisaRaye's mother. Start looking at her, and everything starts from the head and trickles down to LisaRaye, and then whatever trickles down to LisaRaye and becomes unhealed and unresolved trickles down to Katie, and so forth. And then the family pathology, the family pattern, the family curse, generational curse, is perpetuated in that way. She points out to them that, to particularly to Katie, the mother, LisaRaye's mother, that what is in her is in LisaRaye, and what is in LisaRaye is in Kai, and what is in Kai is from the mother. So everything that's going on with LisaRaye and Kai is in Katie, the mother. But it all starts with her. But the grandmother says that she hasn't been the head of anything since she met LisaRaye's father. She says, she tells her story as well. She came from a family of 13. She was the seventh child, and she was the head of that whole line in terms of, I guess, providing and just being the one who's got it together, until she left. And she got tired of picking cotton. And she left, and she met LisaRaye's, and she went, I guess, to the north-ish, to Chicago, and met LisaRaye's father. And then she says, when she met LisaRaye's father, that's where she lost the value of her life. And this makes her angry, and this makes her like kind of raise her voice, and and she says when she met LisaRaye's father, that's where she lost control. That's where she was no longer the head of anything, and that he controlled her. So these are the jewels that Kai says that are on her crown, that she's just trying to maintain the jewels that are on her crown, and that some jewels are falling off, and she's really just trying to make sure that they stay on, and also that she's a bit numb and nonchalant, and she's just trying to kind of work through that. It seems to me like she's trying to find her feet and figure out her life, and figure out how she's going to be independent, how she's going to support herself, how she's going to have a vision and a dream and go for that for her life. LisaRaye says this about her, the jewels on her crown. She says that she's compassionate, and she goes on to explain that about her. And then Katie, the grandmother, says that, she feels like while she's at LisaRaye's house, she's an aggravation, and that LisaRaye is ungrateful. She doesn't say ungrateful for what. And then she really just loses it and goes off, and she says, people aren't telling the truth, and that they don't know how to have the conversation, how to have an honest conversation that they need to have. So Iyanla says, okay, from hearing the different things that you think are on your crown, and the things that your different stories, she assesses that, okay, there is some systematic, and then there's some individual healing that needs to be done. So systematic healing, it's that generational stuff that needs to be uprooted, looked at, reckoned with, and then healed. And then the individual stuff. So she goes on into accountability. Katie tells a story, and she tells a story about LisaRaye's father. She met LisaRaye's father, they get married, they have LisaRaye, but he was an abusive husband. He beat her up, and she endured the abuse because her husband had money. And Katie endured because in her mind, she made the choice that she was setting up her child, LisaRaye, for a better future, so that Lisa can stand on her own and would not struggle. And then it goes back to, this is what she feels like LisaRaye is ungrateful about. A choice that she made on her own to do in order to provide a future for LisaRaye. Choice that LisaRaye didn't ask her to make. Endure abuse, endure a man who was an adulterous, dishonest, manipulative man. LisaRaye didn't ask her mom to endure all of that in order to secure a bright and good future for her. Her mom did that on her own accord and made that choice, but she wants LisaRaye to be grateful for it. Okay, the things parents do. Okay, so she feels like, of course, she feels like Lisa's ungrateful for her choices that she made, and the sacrifices that she made for LisaRaye. And she talks about how when her husband died because he was killed by a girlfriend, she was bitter about Lisa not inquiring from her about how she was doing about the loss of her husband. And Iyanla's like, she didn't inquire about the loss. First of all, that's not her responsibility. And second of all, she didn't inquire because she also lost a father. So she was busy processing the death of her father. While you were processing the death of your man, she was processing the death of her father. And I totally relate to that. You know, it's as if when a parent loses another parent, they want you to take care of them. And they're not thinking about the fact that you've lost your parent, you've lost your mom, or you've lost your dad, and you're grieving the loss of your parent. They're grieving the loss of their spouse, but you're grieving the loss of your parent. And so both of you are in pain. And no one, if anyone is going to take care of somebody else, it's going to be the grown-up, it's going to be the parent, it's going to be the adult, and not the child taking care of the adult who's lost their spouse. Unfortunately, it works like that, you know? Fortunately or unfortunately, I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm like, and it should work like that because you have more, you should, as an adult, the assumption is, the educated guess is that you've gone through enough life to be able to handle it. It might even just be a centimeter better, but you have gone through life enough to be able to handle it better than a child who's just lost their parent, their other parent. So, and then the other part of Katie's story is that she tells Iyanla that how he died is that he was shot by one of his many girlfriends, and that he was a man who had many women, and that she stayed. So Katie tells Iyanla that you know, this is also a man that had many girlfriends, and he died because he was shot by one of his girlfriends. But Iyanla asks her, why did you stay? And she gets defensive about that. Iyanla wants her to see that you stayed, you had the choice to leave. And, you know, she says she stayed because she was uneducated and she had nowhere else to go. But she says, but you have to sit in that. Take accountability for the fact that you stayed, you know, and that was your choice. She could have made a different choice. She could have gone somewhere else. She could have gone to a shelter. She could have done other things. She made a choice to stay with a man that was abusing her physically, probably emotionally, because he was manipulative and controlling, using his money. And then a man who was also a cheater, abusive man, a crazy-making triangulator, crazy-making narcissist from what I'm seeing, right? And then Iyanla calls Katie out and says, yeah, what I'm seeing in you is that you are selfish, you are bitter, you have an entitlement to this gratitude of your sacrifices that you made, choices that LisaRaye didn't ask you to make to stay with her father. And you have this selfish want and need to be served. For me, what I saw at this point, I see that Katie is blind to the fact that she is the blueprint for what is going on with LisaRaye and Kai and herself, and that she's the head of that blueprint, and that the trickle down of the pathology starts with her. It doesn't start with LisaRaye. It doesn't start with anybody else. The choices she made were hers, and that because those were her choices, and then there were some unhealed things from her past when she had her child, when she got married, she passed them on to her child, who then passed them on to her child. So next up, LisaRaye meets with Katie. Is it with Katie? No, with Kai, and points out her likeness to her grandmother, Katie. And, you know, listens to Katie's grievance. And Kai's grievance is that she was sent away. At some point, you know, she had a bad attitude, and there was she left home at 13, and later on, maybe at 16, she was sent away to some correctional boarding school situation because she had an attitude problem. And her grievance is that, you know, this was done and that this hurt her and that she never really told her mom that. What comes up in the conversation with Kai and Iyanla is that, is she willing, is that first she's lost her vision. She has no vision. Kai seems to have no vision and have no dream for her own life. She's 30, she has a daughter, and she's still trying to get herself together in terms of, oh, what am I going to do? And that's not a judgment. That's like, just a statement. And that becomes apparent in the conversation. And Iyanla points out to her that she's going to have to be willing to fall flat on her face, trying to figure it out on her own so that she can get back to her own vision and her own dreams. She can get back to the own seat of her own throne and move from a place of, as a young lady, a mother, move from a place of owning her own throne, her own knowing, and standing up for her own knowing, so that then from that can come her own vision and her own dreams, and then she can pursue those things, not depending on the provision of her mother and that security that provides for her. And she says she's not willing to fall flat on her face. She says no. And in this moment, it becomes very, very apparent to me that because she's been spoiled and been provided for in the ways that she has been by LisaRaye, her mother, Kai is in arrested development. She's literally just laying dormant because she won't let go of what her mother's providing for her to get hold of what is laid up for her to take a hold of and to work with that and build on that and cultivate that for herself. I can relate. A broken heart and soul is passed on to the children when they have children. So if you don't heal your stuff before you have children, you're passing that on. If you don't see it, look at it, wade in it, sit in it, and see it for what it is, and then heal it, you're passing it on. So LisaRaye's story is that she was spoiled and accommodated by her dad. Arrested development. He planned her entire life, her entire future. The plan for LisaRaye's future was that she was going to take over the business from her father, and she was going to be involved in the business. And like Kai, she had no vision for her life. But there was this vision of this man who was her father, her provider, and saying, this is what you're going to do. Until he got killed by one of his girlfriends. So now she had to get it together. And she says when her dad died, it became obviously now the leader of the business was going to be her mother. And she says it became apparent then when the dad died that Katie, the mother, saw it as an opportunity to have her power again, her power and control again. And because LisaRaye was a daddy's girl and a daddy's favorite, and the person that the dad had pitted the mother against to compete with, she was going to pay for it. LisaRaye says that it became apparent to her that she was about to pay for it. Her mom was coming for her because now the protector, the dad, who was spoiling her, who was the apple of, whom she was the apple of the eye of, was gone. And so she got to have control. Katie, LisaRaye's mother, was now in control, and it was now her payback time. So when she figured this out, LisaRaye, that her mom was now back in control and she was going to have to pay for her being in control, she says from there she figured out that she had to fend for herself. And although she was not ready to be an adult because she had been in arrested development, she had been spoiled by her dad, she had lived the cushy life, you know what I mean? The controlling part, like her dad, it becomes apparent in this conversation with Iyanla that just like her dad, she stripped Kai of her sense of self in the same way that her dad, by spoiling her and saying, this is what you're going to do with your future, you're going to be in the business. And now she's surprised that Kai is in arrested development, that her child is 30 with a child of her own, living in her house, has an attitude, has no vision, has no dream for her life, and she hasn't gotten herself together. And she's wondering why, but it connects back to that's what she learned from her dad. Her dad did that. He had money, he spoiled her, and that's how he showed his love, or that's how he manipulated and controlled her and loved her in an inauthentic way. And that's exactly what she did with Kai, because that's all she knew. And then competition between LisaRaye and Katie for dad's attention. Iyanla asked her, are you aware that asked LisaRaye, are you aware that you are your mother? That LisaRaye is her mother. She says, are you aware that you're your mother? You're literally your mother. And you won't take what I'm giving back to you, mirroring back to you. You won't take it, you won't see it. And as long as you won't take it and you won't see it and you won't sit in it, it will not heal. And when you don't heal it, like I said before, it creates the same conflict. It creates the breakdown in this relationship, in this 3 generation. That's the breakdown. All of them wouldn't take it, wouldn't see it, and wouldn't heal it. So it created breakdown because then a toxic generational pathology was being passed on from generation to generation. And they're all fighting themselves. The next generation, as I said it, last week I alluded to this. I said, I get a feeling that parenting should come after healing your wounds and your broken places, your inherited wounds, as much as you can before you have children. Because anything that you have not sat in, everything that you have not taken and seen, everything that you have not healed, you simply pass on to your children, and it becomes a generational pathology and curse and a negative pattern just repeating itself. Different costumes, different lighting, different characters, but the same script. Maybe rearrangement of the script, but it's the same script. It becomes apparent in this questioning of all of them together and all of them individually, hearing their stories, hearing their grievances with each other, that they're all the same person. They're one person because of Katie's stuff. They're manipulative, they're denying, they're controlling, and avoid. And Iyanla points this out to them, but is also emphasizing that this starts from Katie and it's trickled down, and it's muted and transmuted into however it looks like with your daughter, and with Katie and LisaRaye it looked however it looked, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Next up, Katie, LisaRaye, and Kai are now sitting together. Let me take a sip of this coffee. Okay, so this is the part where it's the truth telling and the breakthrough part. This for me was the part that was just like the done data. This was the part that was the this was the greatest illustration of pathology and breaking the pattern that I have seen. It was so obvious and so apparent and so clear, more than any other time that I've seen this being pointed out. So this particular episode for me was just it was an excellent episode, and it was just an outstanding episode in illustrating generational pathologies and those generational patterns and curses, and how they transmute and take whatever form and shape in a different way, in a different era, and just repeat themselves. I'll be right back.